Thick Lady Dozes Off on Alpha's shoulder and wakes up mated to him in Los Angeles. She woke up in a body that didn't feel like hers anymore. That's the first thing Arya noticed. Not the silk sheets tangled around her legs, not the floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Los Angeles skyline at dawn, not even the fact that she was in a hotel room that probably cost more per night than her monthly rent.
No.
What she noticed was the feeling. Like someone had reached inside her chest, grabbed hold of something vital, and tied it to an anchor she couldn't see. Her heart was beating in a rhythm that wasn't entirely her own. She stumbled out of bed, legs shaky, and caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman staring back looked like her. Same dark curls falling past her shoulders, same brown eyes, same curves that she'd learned to love even when the world told her not to. But there was something different. Something wrong. Her hand flew to her throat. The mark was silver. Delicate. Almost beautiful, if it wasn't so terrifying. It looked like a wolf's bite, but the edges shimmered with an otherworldly glow, as if someone had traced it with moonlight. The skin around it was smooth, healed, like it had been there for weeks instead of... Arya's breath caught. This wasn't here last night. She would have noticed. She would have felt it. Her fingers trembled as they traced the pattern. The moment she touched it, a shock of sensation shot through her. Not pain, exactly, but something deeper. Primal. Like her body was trying to tell her something her mind refused to accept. And then she smelled him. Cedarwood. Rain-soaked earth. Something wild and ancient that made her wolf. Her dormant, useless, pathetic excuse for a wolf. Stir for the first time in her entire life. Arya spun around. The bathroom door was open. Through it, she could see into the suite's main room, all sleek modern furniture and muted grays. And standing by the window, backlit by the rising sun, was a man who looked like he'd been carved from stone and fury. He was tall, easily 6'4", with broad shoulders that filled out his black shirt in a way that should be illegal. His hair was dark, slightly too long, like he'd forgotten to cut it for a few months. But it was his face that stopped her cold. Sharp jawline, severe cheekbones, and eyes that flickered between ice blue and molten gold, like he couldn't decide whether to be human or something else entirely. He hadn't moved in 20 minutes. Just stood there, staring at her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Who the hell are you?" Arya's voice came out stronger than she felt. Good. She wasn't about to let some stranger see her panic. The man didn't answer. His jaw tensed. His hands, which had been loose at his sides, curled into fists. "I asked you a question." She took a step forward, ignoring the fact that she was barefoot and wearing a silk robe she definitely didn't own. "Where am I? What did you do to me?" Bowen. His voice was gravel and whiskey, rough from disuse. "My name is Bowen." "Fantastic. Now answer the rest, Bowen." She crossed her arms, trying to ignore the way his scent wrapped around her like a living thing. "Because I'm about 3 seconds away from screaming this entire hotel down." His eyes flashed gold. Just for a moment. But it was enough. Arya's stomach dropped. "You're a shifter." "Yes. And this?" She gestured to her throat, to the mark that was still sending phantom pulses of sensation through her body. "What the hell is this?" Bowen's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes cracked.
"Just barely."
"A mating bond." The words hung in the air between them like a death sentence. Arya laughed. It was sharp, bitter, edged with hysteria. "A mating bond."
"Right."
"That's insane. I don't even know you." "I know. I fell asleep on the metro. On some random guy's shoulder because I was dead tired after pulling a double at the diner, and now you're telling me I'm what? Magically married to a complete stranger." "It's not magic." His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was reciting facts he'd rather forget. "It's biology. The wolf chooses. The bond forms. There's no negotiation." "Well, my wolf must be defective," Arya snapped, "because I didn't choose anything." Bowen's jaw tightened. "Neither did I." The admission hung between them, raw and jagged. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Arya could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears, could feel the strange pull in her chest intensifying the longer she looked at him. This was wrong. All of this was wrong. I want to go home, she said quietly. You can't. Watch me. She turned toward the door, but Bowen moved faster than should be possible. He didn't touch her, kept a careful 3 feet of distance, but his body blocked her path like a living wall. Listen to me. His voice was low, urgent. You have a mark on your throat that every shifter in this city can see. It says you belong to an alpha. My alpha. And there are wolves out there who would kill you just to get to me. Aria's blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Los Angeles has 5 packs. 5 territories. I control the west side. But the others? His eyes darkened. They've been looking for a reason to challenge me for 2 centuries. And you. He gestured to her, frustrated, like she was a problem he couldn't solve. You just became that reason. I didn't ask for this. I know. And for the first time, there was something almost human in his expression. Something that looked like regret. But it doesn't matter. The bond is set. You're mine now. And every wolf in this city knows it. Aria's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her sides, refusing to let him see how terrified she was. Then break it. Reject it. Whatever the rules are, there has to be a way out. Bowen's expression went hollow. There is. One of us has to die. The room tilted. Aria grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. You're lying. I wish I was. She searched his face for any sign of deception, but all she found was exhaustion. Bone-deep, ancient exhaustion. Like he'd been carrying a weight for so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. Before we dive in any deeper, Aria heard herself say, though her voice sounded far away, can someone please explain to me how I went from falling asleep on a commuter train to waking up in a supernatural hostage situation? Because I'm pretty sure this violates about 15 different laws. Bowen's mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. You fell asleep on my shoulder. I what? The metro. Last night. You sat down next to me. 30 seconds later. You were out cold. Your head dropped onto my shoulder. He said it like he was describing a crime scene. Clinical. Detached. I should have moved. Should have woken you up. But I didn't. Why not? His eyes met hers. And for a moment, just a moment, the mask slipped. Because I haven't felt anything in 180 years. And then you touched me, and my wolf woke up. Aria's throat tightened. That's not my fault. I know. He turned away, back to the window, shoulders rigid. But it doesn't change what happened. The bond formed the second you fell asleep. By the time you woke up, it was already done. And you just let it happen? Anger flared hot in her chest, burning away the fear. You didn't think to, I don't know, stop it? You can't stop a mating bond, Bowen said quietly. You can only survive it. Before Aria could respond, the suite door opened. A woman walked in, tall, dark-skinned, dressed in a tailored suit that screamed money and power. She looked between them and sighed. Still alive.
Good.
That's a start. She held up her phone. We have a problem. The East Side Pack knows about the bond. They're calling for a right of claim. Bowen went very still. When? 3 days. Aria looked between them, lost. What's a right of claim? The woman, who Aria would later learn was named Octavia, Bowen's beta and second-in-command, gave her a pitying look. It means someone wants to challenge for you. A fight to the death. Winner takes the mate. Aria's vision blurred. I need to sit down.
No.
Bowen's voice cut through the fog. You need to learn how to fight. Because in 3 days, someone's going to try to take you from me. And if I lose, his voice cracked.
Just barely.
You'll wish you'd never woken up. Aria sank into the chair, her legs finally giving out. Her hands found her throat again, traced the mark that had destroyed her life in a single night. Before we dive in, she heard Octavia say, though everything felt distant now, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy werewolf stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. Arya barely registered the words. All she could think about was the mark on her throat, the bond she didn't ask for, and the stranger standing by the window who'd just become the most dangerous person in her life. Or maybe the only one who could keep her alive. Chapter 2. The words landed like a punch to the gut. Arya's fingers went numb. She was still gripping the armrest of the chair, knuckles white, trying to process what Octavia had just said. A fight to the death. For her. Like she was some kind of prize in a twisted game she never agreed to play.
No.
The word came out flat, final. Absolutely not. This is insane. You people are insane. Bowen didn't move from his position by the window, but his shoulders tensed. It's pack law. Older than any city, any government. When an alpha claims a mate, others can challenge for the right. I'm not a right, Arya hissed, pushing herself to her feet. The silk robe shifted around her, a constant reminder that nothing about this situation belonged to her. Not the clothes, not the room, not even her own body anymore. I'm a person. A human being with a life and a job and bills to pay. I can't just disappear into some werewolf soap opera because your biology decided to malfunction. Your biology did the same thing, Bowen said quietly. Too quietly, like he was barely holding himself together. The bond doesn't form one-sided. Your wolf recognized mine. She chose this. My wolf is useless, Arya shot back. I'm latent. I can't shift. I can't heal. I can't do any of the things you people can do. So, whatever signal you think you're getting, it's broken. Just like this entire situation. Octavia stepped forward, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She moved with the kind of grace that came from decades, maybe centuries, of knowing exactly who she was and what she was capable of. Latent or not, you carry the bloodline. And that mark on your throat? It's broadcasting to every shifter within a 100-mile radius that Bowen Kale, alpha of the West Side Pack, has taken a mate for the first time in 2 centuries. The name hit Arya like cold water. Bowen Kale. She'd heard that name before, whispered in the kitchen at the diner by one of the line cooks who swore he'd seen a wolf the size of a bear near Griffith Park. She'd laughed it off, filed it away with all the other urban legends that circulated through Los Angeles like ghost stories. But this wasn't a story. This was standing 6 feet away from her, staring at her with eyes that looked like they'd forgotten how to hope. 2 centuries, Arya repeated slowly. You've been alive for 200 years. Longer. Bowen's voice was rough, like he didn't use it often. I was born in 1804. Turned when I was 26. Haven't aged a day since. The room spun. Arya sat back down because her legs couldn't hold her anymore. That's impossible. So is waking up with a mating bond you didn't ask for, Octavia pointed out, not unkindly. And yet, here we are. Arya pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to breathe through the panic clawing up her throat. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be her life. 24 hours ago, her biggest problem was whether she could cover her half of the rent if her roommate flaked again. Now she was sitting in a billionaire's hotel suite being told that supernatural creatures wanted to fight over her like she was the last slice of pizza. I need my phone, she said finally, dropping her hands. I need to call my roommate. My boss. I have a shift in. She glanced at the clock on the wall. 3 hours. You're not going to your shift, Bowen said. Excuse me? You're not leaving the suite. Not until the challenge is resolved. Arya laughed. It came out harsh, jagged. You think you can just keep me here? That's called kidnapping, caveman. Pretty sure that's illegal even in your weird wolf world. You want to know what's illegal? Bowen turned from the window, and the full force of his attention hit her like a physical thing. Killing an alpha's mate. But that won't stop Casimir if he finds you alone. He'll gut you in an alley and leave your body for me to find, just to prove a point. The brutality of the words stole her breath. Who's Casimir? East Side Alpha, Octavia supplied. Ambitious. Ruthless. He's been looking for an excuse to challenge Bowen's territory for decades. This. She gestured between them. This is exactly the opening he's been waiting for. Arya's mind raced. Then reject the bond. Tell everyone it was a mistake. I'll leave town. Change my name. Whatever it takes. It doesn't work that way, Bowen said, and there was something raw in his voice now, something that sounded like pain. The bond is set. Even if I publicly rejected you, the mark would remain. You'd still smell like mine. You'd still be a target. Then, what's the point? Arya demanded. If I'm dead either way, why does it matter if I stay here or go home? Because here, I can protect you, Bowen said. Out there, you're alone. I've been alone my whole life, Arya shot back. I think I can manage another day. Bowen crossed the room in 3 strides. He didn't touch her, kept that same careful distance. But his presence was overwhelming. Heat radiated off him like a furnace, and his scent wrapped around her. Cedarwood and rain, and something darker, older. Her traitorous wolf stirred again, pressing against the edges of her consciousness, like it wanted out. You think you've been alone? Bowen's voice dropped to something barely above a whisper. You have no idea what alone looks like. I've spent 180 years walking through a world that doesn't touch me. I don't sleep. I don't dream. I don't feel. And then you, he stopped, jaw working like the words were choking him. You fell asleep on my shoulder, and everything I've spent 2 centuries burying came back. Arya stared at him, really looked at him, past the expensive clothes and the perfect bone structure, and the aura of barely contained violence. His eyes were haunted, ancient, like he'd seen too much and survived anyway, even though part of him wished he hadn't. That's not my fault, she said quietly. I know. He stepped back, putting distance between them again. But it doesn't change what happened. You're bound to me now. For better or worse. Worse, Arya muttered. Definitely worse. Octavia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her expression darkened. We have movement. 3 wolves spotted near Koreatown. They're circling Arya's building. Arya's stomach dropped. My roommate is human, Octavia finished. She's safe. They're not interested in her. How do you know? Because I have eyes on her right now. Octavia turned her phone around, showing a video feed of a young woman with pink hair leaving an apartment building, headphones in, completely oblivious. She left for her morning run 10 minutes ago. She's fine. Arya's hands were shaking again. She pressed them flat against her thighs. I didn't ask for this, she said again, but her voice cracked this time. I was just tired. I just wanted to go home. I know. Bowen's voice was softer now. Gentler. And I'm sorry. But the bond is done. We can't undo it. We can only survive it. You keep saying that, Arya said, looking up at him. Survive it. Like it's a disease. Isn't it? Bowen's expression was unreadable. Something that takes over your body without permission? Changes everything about who you are. Arya didn't have an answer for that. Octavia cleared her throat. If we're done with the existential crisis, we need to talk strategy. The challenge is in 3 days. That gives us 72 hours to prepare. Prepare for what? Arya asked. I can't fight. I'm latent, remember? I'm basically human with a better sense of smell. That's about to change, Bowen said. Arya's heart stuttered.
What?
The bond is pulling power from me into you, Bowen explained. It's how mating bonds work. The stronger wolf shares strength with the weaker. Your dormant wolf is waking up. I don't feel any different. You will. Bowen's eyes flashed gold. By tomorrow, you'll start to shift. By the day after, you'll have full access to your wolf. And by the time the challenge comes, you'll be strong enough to defend yourself. Arya's throat tightened. I don't want to shift.
I don't want any of this.
Too bad, Octavia said bluntly. Because ready or not, your wolf is coming. And if you don't learn to control her, she'll control you. The room felt too small. Too hot. Arya stood up, needing to move, needing to do something other than sit here while strangers decided her fate. I need air. You can't leave, Bowen said. Then open a window, because I'm about 5 seconds from losing it completely. Bowen and Octavia exchanged a look. Something passed between them, some silent conversation Arya wasn't privy to. Finally, Bowen nodded. "Balcony," he said. "But I'm coming with you." "Of course you are," Arya muttered. "Because privacy is apparently another thing I don't get to have anymore." She pushed past him, found the sliding glass door, and stepped out onto the balcony. The morning air hit her like a blessing, cool, sharp, carrying the scent of smog and jasmine and 1,000 other city smells. Los Angeles sprawled out below them, glittering in the early light, completely unaware that monsters walked its streets. Bowen followed but kept his distance, leaning against the railing a few feet away. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched, fragile and strange. "I had a life," Arya said finally, staring out at the skyline. "It wasn't much. Crappy apartment, dead-end jobs, student loans I'll probably die with. But it was mine. I chose it. Every terrible, exhausting piece of it." "I know what it's like to lose your life," Bowen said quietly. "To wake up one day and realize everything you knew is gone. Is that what happened to you? 200 years ago?" "Something like that." His hands gripped the railing, knuckles white. "I was turned against my will, taken from my family, told I could never go back, that I was a monster now and monsters don't get happy endings." Arya glanced at him. "Did you believe that?" "For a long time." His jaw tightened. "And then I met someone who made me think maybe I was wrong, that maybe I could have something good, something real." "Your first mate," Arya guessed. Bowen nodded. "Her name was Elspeth. She was fierce, brilliant. She saw the humanity in me when I couldn't see it in myself." His voice went rough. "And then she was murdered because I wasn't strong enough to protect her."
AR.
I's chest ached. "That wasn't your fault, wasn't it?" Bowen turned to look at her, and his eyes were full of centuries-old grief. "I was the alpha.
Protection was my job.
And I failed. So, what? You've spent 200 years punishing yourself. Something like that." Arya shook her head. "That's not living. That's just existing." "I know." Bowen's voice was barely audible, but it was easier than trying to feel again. Safer. "And now?" Arya asked. "Now that you're stuck with me?" Bowen's eyes met hers, and for a moment, the mask slipped completely. "Now I'm terrified. Because I can't lose someone again. I won't survive it." The honesty gutted her. Arya looked away, focusing on the city below because looking at him hurt too much. "Then maybe you should have woken me up on that train." "I tried," Bowen admitted, "for about 30 seconds. But then you smiled in your sleep, and he stopped. Shook his head. "I couldn't do it." Arya's throat burned. "Why?" "Because I hadn't seen someone look peaceful in so long," Bowen said softly. "And I forgot what it felt like to want something." The words hung between them, heavy and devastating. Arya didn't know what to say, didn't know how to respond to that kind of raw, aching honesty. So she didn't. She just stood there on the balcony, watching the sun climb higher over Los Angeles, and tried to figure out how she was going to survive the next 3 days. Behind them, through the open door, Octavia's voice drifted out.
"Bowen.
We have a problem." Of course they did. Because apparently, that's all her life was now. One problem after another, with no end in sight. Chapter 3. The silence after Octavia's interruption was deafening. Arya turned from the balcony, her heart already sinking because she knew that whatever Octavia was about to say would make everything worse. That seemed to be the pattern now. Every time she thought she'd hit rock bottom, someone showed up with a shovel. Octavia stood in the doorway, her phone still in hand, her expression carefully neutral in that way that meant she was hiding something catastrophic. "We need to talk. Inside. Now." Bowen moved first, his body shifting from stillness to motion in a way that was too fluid to be entirely human. Arya followed, her legs still shaky, her mind still reeling from everything he'd just told her on the balcony. About Elspeth.
About loss.
About spending 2 centuries as a walking corpse. Inside, Octavia had pulled up something on her tablet, a map of Los Angeles with colored territories marked out like some kind of supernatural gang warfare diagram. Red, blue, green, yellow, and purple zones, each one labeled with names Aria didn't recognize. Geography lesson. Octavia began without preamble. Los Angeles is divided into 5 pack territories. West Side, that's us, covers everything from Santa Monica to Beverly Hills. We're the oldest, the wealthiest, and we control most of the high-value real estate. She pointed to the red zone. East Side pack runs from downtown to East LA, Alpha Casimir. Ambitious, brutal, and he's been looking for an excuse to expand into our territory for 30 years. Aria crossed her arms, trying to focus despite the exhaustion pulling at her. What about the others? North Side covers the Valley, Studio City, Sherman Oaks, all the way up to the mountains. Alpha Neve. She stays neutral, mostly. Doesn't get involved unless someone threatens her borders. Octavia tapped the blue zone. South Side is Harbor City to Long Beach. Alpha Dimitri, ex-military, runs his pack like a battalion. And Central. She gestured to the small yellow zone in the middle. That's neutral ground. MacArthur Park, parts of Koreatown. It's where the packs meet when they need to negotiate. And where do I fit into this? Aria asked, though she already knew the answer wouldn't be good. You don't, Bowen said flatly. You're not pack. You're not territory. You're an anomaly. A latent wolf who somehow triggered a mating bond with the most powerful alpha in the city. Every pack is going to have an opinion about that. Let me guess, Aria said. Most of those opinions involve me being dead. Not dead, Octavia corrected. Claimed. There's a difference. If another alpha can prove you're not legitimately bonded to Bowen, they can challenge for the right to mate you themselves. It's called right of claim. It's ancient law, older than this country, older than most modern cities. And it's binding. Aria felt sick. So, I'm just what? Property that can be fought over. In the eyes of pack law, Octavia's expression was sympathetic but honest.
Yes.
I know it's archaic. I know it's wrong. But these laws were written centuries ago when survival meant strength and strength meant dominance. They haven't caught up to modern ethics. That's convenient, Aria muttered. So, what happens if someone challenges? What does that look like? Bowen moved to the window again, his back to her, shoulders tense. It's a death match. The challenger and I fight until one of us can't get back up. No rules. No mercy. The winner takes the mate. The loser, he stopped. The loser doesn't walk away. Aria's mouth went dry. And if you lose? Then you belong to whoever killed me. His voice was hollow. And there's nothing you can do about it. The bond will transfer to the victor. Your wolf will recognize them as your new mate. You won't have a choice. That's barbaric. It's survival. Bowen turned to face her, and his eyes were hard again, all that vulnerability from the balcony locked away behind walls. Welcome to the world you didn't know you were part of. Aria wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to wake up in her crappy Koreatown apartment and discover this was all some fever dream brought on by bad tacos. But the mark on her throat pulsed with heat, reminding her that this was real. All of it. So, what do? She asked quietly. We prepare, Octavia said. The challenge is set for 3 days from now. That gives us 72 hours to get you ready. Ready for what? I can't fight. I'm latent, remember? I don't have claws or fangs or any of the things that would actually be useful in a death match. You won't be fighting, Bowen said. I will. But you need to be strong enough to survive what comes after. Because once the challenge is issued, every wolf in the city is going to be watching. And if you show weakness, someone else will challenge. And then someone after that. It won't stop until you're either dead or bonded to someone strong enough that no one dares question it. So I'm stuck, Aria said bitterly. No matter what happens, I lose my freedom. You lost at the moment the bond formed, Bowen said, and there was no apology in his voice. Just cold, hard truth. I'm sorry, but that's the reality. Aria's hands curled into fists. You keep apologizing, but you don't actually seem sorry. You seem resigned. Like this is just another problem you have to manage. Bowen's jaw tightened. What do you want me to say? That I'm devastated? That I lie awake at night wishing things were different? Would that make you feel better? It would make you seem human, Aria shot back. I'm not human, Bowen said coldly. I haven't been for 200 years. And the sooner you accept that, the easier this will be. For who? Aria demanded. You or me? Both of us. The words hung in the air like a slap. Aria stared at him, this man, this creature, who'd upended her entire existence and now had the audacity to act like she was the problem. Like her emotions were an inconvenience he had to tolerate. You're a coward, she said quietly. Bowen's eyes flashed gold. Excuse me? You heard me. Aria took a step toward him, fear momentarily overridden by anger. You spent 2 centuries hiding from your feelings because one person hurt you. And now you're treating me like I'm some kind of burden you have to carry instead of a person you accidentally bonded yourself to. You want me to accept that you're not human?
Fine.
But don't expect me to accept being treated like I'm not either. For a long moment, no one spoke. Octavia looked between them like she was watching a car crash in slow motion. Bowen's expression was unreadable, his body rigid, his hands clenched at his sides. Then he turned and walked out of the room without a word. The door slammed behind him hard enough to rattle the walls. Aria's knees gave out. She sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. Did I just make everything worse? Probably, Octavia said, but there was no judgment in her voice. But you're not wrong. He's been dead inside for longer than I've been alive. Sometimes I forget he used to be different, that he used to care about things. How long have you known him? 50 years, give or take. Octavia sat down across from her. I was turned young, 19. My pack rejected me because I asked too many questions. Bowen took me in, trained me, made me his beta. He's never been warm, but he used to at least pretend to feel things. Then about 20 years ago, he just
Stopped.
Stopped pretending. Stopped trying. What changed? I don't know.
He doesn't talk about it.
But whatever it was, it broke something in him that hasn't healed. Octavia leaned forward. Maybe that's why the bond formed with you. Maybe his wolf recognized something in yours that could reach the parts of him he's buried. Or maybe it was just bad luck, Aria said tiredly. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong shoulder to fall asleep on. Maybe. Octavia smiled slightly. But I don't think wolves believe in coincidence. Aria touched her throat again, felt the mark pulse beneath her fingers. What happens if we can't stop the challenge? What happens if Bowen fights and loses? Then you learn to survive with whoever wins you. Octavia's voice was gentle but firm. I won't lie to you, Aria. If Casimir takes you, your life won't be easy. He's cruel, possessive. He'll see you as a trophy, not a partner. But you'll be alive. And where there's life, there's a chance to escape, to fight back, to find freedom again. That's supposed to be comforting? It's supposed to be honest. Octavia stood. Now come on. We don't have time for pity parties. If your wolf is waking up, we need to start training. The more control you have when she surfaces, the better chance you have of surviving what's coming. Aria pushed herself to her feet, every muscle in her body screaming in protest. I don't even know where to start. That's what I'm here for. Octavia headed for the door. We'll start small. Breathing exercises. Meditation. Learning to feel your wolf before she decides to claw her way out. And if she does, just comes out without warning. Octavia paused. Then you hold on and pray you don't hurt anyone you care about. First shifts are violent. Painful. Your body isn't designed to break apart and reform, but it does anyway. The only way through is through. Aria's stomach churned. You're really selling this. I'm being realistic. You wanted honesty? That's what honesty looks like. Octavia softened slightly. But for what it's worth, I think you're stronger than you realize. You've survived this long without a pack, without protection, without even a functioning wolf. That takes grit. Don't underestimate yourself just because Bowen's too damaged to see your worth. The words settled into Arya's chest, warm and unexpected. She nodded, not trusting her voice. They left the suite and headed down a private corridor to an elevator Arya hadn't noticed before. Octavia scanned her palm on a biometric reader, and the doors opened to reveal an elevator with only one button.
Down.
Where are we going? Arya asked as they descended. Bowen's estate. The hotel was just temporary, a neutral space to bring you until we were sure no one would track your scent. But now that the challenge is issued, we need to be somewhere defensible. Somewhere with resources. The elevator ride felt like it took forever. When the doors finally opened, Arya stepped out into an underground parking garage filled with luxury vehicles that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. Octavia led her to a matte black SUV with tinted windows. They drove in silence through Los Angeles traffic, heading west toward the Hollywood Hills. The city passed by the window. Palm trees and strip malls and street vendors and people going about their normal lives, completely unaware that monsters lived among them. Arya pressed her forehead against the cool glass. Does it ever get easier? Living with this secret? No, Octavia said honestly. But you get used to it. You learn to code switch. Human in public, wolf in private. After a while, it becomes second nature. What if I don't want to code switch? What if I just want my old life back? Then you're going to be disappointed. Octavia's voice wasn't cruel, just matter of fact. Because that life is gone. The moment the bond formed, you stopped being fully human. Your wolf is awake now. Maybe not fully, but she's there. And she's not going back to sleep. Arya closed her eyes, fighting back tears she refused to let fall. She wouldn't cry. Not here. Not in front of someone who'd see it as weakness. The SUV turned off Mulholland Drive onto a private road that wound up into the hills. Gates opened automatically as they approached, tall, iron, topped with security cameras that tracked their movement. The estate beyond was breathtaking. Modern architecture that seemed to grow out of the hillside, all glass and steel and clean lines. It looked like something from a magazine, the kind of place Arya used to daydream about while scrubbing grease off diner plates. This is where Bowen lives? She asked quietly. This is Pack headquarters, Octavia corrected. Bowen has private quarters, but there are about 30 wolves who live here full-time.
Guards.
Enforcers. Admin staff. We're a family, in our own dysfunctional way. The SUV pulled into a circular driveway. Octavia killed the engine and turned to face Arya. Before we go inside, I need you to understand something. Pack hierarchy is everything. Bowen is alpha, which means his word is law. I'm beta, which means I enforce that law. Everyone else falls somewhere below us. And you? She gestured to Arya's throat. You're marked as alpha's mate. That puts you second only to Bowen in terms of authority. People will defer to you, respect you, fear you even, whether you've earned it or not. I don't want authority, Arya said. I just want to survive. Too bad. You don't get to choose how they see you. You only get to choose how you respond to it. Octavia opened her door.
Come on.
Let's get you settled before Bowen comes back and broods at you some more. Arya followed her out of the SUV and up a set of stone steps to massive double doors. They opened before Octavia could knock, revealing a young man with sandy hair and nervous energy. Beta, he said quickly. We've been expecting you. Alpha said to prepare the East Wing guest suite. Thank you, Flynn. Octavia stepped inside, and Arya trailed behind her into a foyer that was somehow both intimidating and beautiful. High ceilings. Modern art on the walls. A chandelier that probably cost more than Arya's entire life savings. Flynn's eyes landed on Arya, widened, then quickly dropped to the floor. Welcome, Luna. Arya blinked. I'm sorry, what? Luna, Octavia explained. It's the title for an alpha's mate. You'll hear it a lot around here. I'm not. Arya started, then stopped because what was the point? She wasn't anything she wanted to be anymore.
Sure.
Whatever. Flynn looked relieved that she hadn't snapped at him. He led them through a series of hallways, each one more impressive than the last, until they reached a door at the end of a quiet corridor. You're sweet, he said, opening it. The room beyond was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. A king-size bed with crisp white linens. A sitting area with plush furniture. An ensuite bathroom that was bigger than Arya's entire apartment. This is too much, Arya said quietly. This is the bare minimum, Octavia countered. You're Alpha's mate. You live like Alpha's mate. End of discussion. She checked her watch. I'll give you an hour to shower and change. There's clothes in the closet, your size, courtesy of my best guess, and a very efficient personal shopper. Meet me in the training room downstairs when you're ready. Where's Bowen? Probably running himself into the ground in the hills. Octavia's expression softened.
Don't worry about him.
He'll come around. He always does. He just needs time to remember how to be something other than empty. She left, closing the door behind her. Arya stood alone in the too beautiful room, staring at her reflection in the window. The mark on her throat seemed to glow in the afternoon light. She traced it with trembling fingers, felt that same pulse of heat, that same sense of connection to someone she barely knew. Okay, Wolf, she whispered to herself. If you're really in there, now would be a great time to give me a sign. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, deep in her chest, something stirred. Something old and wild and fiercely alive. Her wolf answered, and Arya realized, with equal parts terror and awe, that everything Octavia said was true. There was no going back. There was only forward. We'll be right back after this, but first, drop a comment below and tell us, do you think Arya should embrace her new wolf powers, or is she in over her head? And if you're not subscribed yet, honestly, what are you waiting for? We drop stories like this every week. Don't miss out. Chapter 4. The night Arya's power exploded in downtown Los Angeles. 3 things happened simultaneously. First, Casimir's nose shattered under her palm with a sound like breaking pottery. Second, silver light erupted from her hands. Not fire, not electricity, but something older, something that made every wolf within 100 yards drop to their knees. And third, Bowen felt it through the bond like a lightning strike to his chest, so visceral and violent that he was moving before his conscious mind even registered the danger. He found her in Pershing Square 20 minutes later, surrounded by unconscious East Side wolves and trembling so hard her teeth chattered. Her hands still glowed faintly, like dying embers. Blood, not hers, splattered her jeans and the diner uniform she still wore under her borrowed jacket. Bowen didn't speak. Just scooped her up like she weighed nothing and carried her to the SUV Octavia had pulled up to the curb, engine running, door already open. Arya didn't fight him. She pressed her face into his shoulder and tried not to fall apart completely. The drive back to the estate was silent except for Arya's ragged breathing and the low rumble of the engine. Bowen kept one hand on her thigh, grounding, anchoring, while the other gripped the steering wheel hard enough to make the leather creak. His jaw was locked, his eyes fixed on the road, but Arya could feel his fury radiating through the bond. Not at her, at himself, at Casimir, at the entire situation that had put her in danger. When they pulled into the estate, Bowen didn't take her to her room. He led her instead to his private study, a space she hadn't seen before, all dark wood and leather and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves that smelled like old paper and whiskey. He settled her on the couch, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, and poured himself 3 fingers of scotch from a crystal decanter. He downed it in one swallow, poured another, then finally turned to look at her. "You're not latent," he said. His voice was rough, strained. "You never were." Arya's hands were still shaking. She pulled the blanket tighter, trying to process what he was saying through the adrenaline crash that was making her head swim. "What are you talking about? I've been tested. Multiple times. The doctor said my wolf was dormant." Non-functional. They were wrong. Bowen set the glass down with deliberate care, like he didn't trust himself to hold it. Or they didn't know what they were looking at. What you did tonight, that wasn't a latent wolf waking up. That was a bound wolf breaking free. Bound. Arya repeated the word slowly, tasting it. What does that mean? It means someone put a lock on your wolf. Probably when you were very young. Bowen crossed to the bookshelves, pulled out a leather-bound journal that looked like it was older than California itself. He flipped through pages covered in handwriting that Arya couldn't read, some language that predated English. It's a ritual. Ancient. Illegal in most modern packs, because it's considered barbaric. You take a child's wolf and you cage it. Bury it so deep they can't access it.
Can't feel it.
Can't even sense it's there. Arya's chest tightened. Why would anyone do that? 2 reasons. Bowen's eyes were dark when he looked up from the journal. Either to keep them safe, hide them from enemies who might hunt them for their bloodline. Or to keep them weak, ensure they never become a threat. The words hit like a physical blow. Arya thought about her childhood. The way her mother had moved them every few months, never staying in one place long enough to make friends or establish roots. The way she'd flinched at loud noises, always looking over her shoulder like something was chasing them. The way she'd made Arya promise, over and over, to never tell anyone what they were, to never trust strangers, to never, ever let anyone see her bleed. My mother, Arya whispered. The memories were coming faster now, sharper. She died when I was 7.
Car accident, they said.
But I remember, her voice cracked. I remember her telling me to run.
To hide.
I remember her screaming my name. Bowen's expression shifted. Something that looked almost like recognition flickered across his face. There, and gone so fast Arya almost missed it. Describe her. What? Your mother. Describe her to me. His voice was urgent now, almost desperate. Everything. Hair color, eyes, any distinguishing marks. Arya's mind raced, pulling up fragments of memory she'd buried under years of grief and foster care and survival. Dark hair. Almost black. She wore it long, down to her waist. Silver eyes, I always thought they looked like mirrors. And she had a scar. Arya's hand went to her own collarbone, mirroring the placement. Right here. Crescent-shaped. She said she got it in an accident before I was born. The glass in Bowen's hand shattered. He didn't seem to notice. Just stood there, whiskey dripping from his fingers, shards of crystal glittering on the hardwood floor, staring at Arya like she'd just told him the dead had risen. That's impossible, he breathed.
What?
What's impossible? Bowen's legs seemed to give out. He sank into the chair across from her, his face gone pale beneath his tan. Your mother. The woman you just described. His voice was hollow.
Empty.
I knew her. The room tilted. You what? Her name was Lyra. Bowen's eyes were distant, seeing something, or someone, that wasn't there. She was part of my pack. 200 years ago. She was one of the strongest wolves I'd ever seen.
Fierce.
Intelligent. She could track a scent across 3 counties and fight like she had nothing to lose. He looked at Arya, and there was something broken in his expression. She had a crescent scar on her collarbone. Got it in a challenge fight when she was 19. I was there. I saw it happen. Arya couldn't breathe. That's not possible. My mother was born in 1985. She died in 2003. She was human, as far as anyone knew. She worked as a waitress. She shouldn't have existed, Bowen interrupted. Because Lyra died in 1847. I buried her myself. In the hills above what's now Pasadena. She was killed protecting a group of young wolves from hunters. The silence that followed was suffocating. Arya's mind spun, trying to make sense of what he was saying, trying to reconcile the woman who'd raised her, tired, scared, always running, with the warrior Bowen was describing. It didn't fit. Nothing fit. You're wrong, Arya said finally. You have to be. People don't just. Time doesn't work that way. You can't die in 1847 and show up in 1985. I know. Bowen leaned forward, elbows on his knees, head in his hands.
But I also know what I saw.
And you, he looked up at her, and his eyes were wild. You have her eyes. Her bone structure. Even the way you move, the way you tilt your head when you're thinking, it's her. Like looking at a ghost. Aria's heart hammered against her ribs. So, what are you saying? That my mother was some kind of time traveler? That she died, came back to life over a century later, had me, and then died again? I don't know. Bowen's voice was raw. But I know bloodlines. I know wolf genetics. And I know that what you did tonight, the silver light, the way you dropped trained fighters without even trying, that's not normal wolf power. That's something older. Something that shouldn't exist anymore. Older how? Bowen stood, crossed to another bookshelf, and pulled down a different book. This one was even more ancient, the leather cover cracked and faded. He opened it to a page marked with a strip of red silk and turned it so Arya could see. The illustration showed a wolf unlike any she'd seen before. Larger than a normal wolf, with silver-white fur that seemed to glow on the page. Its eyes were rendered in metallic ink that caught the light. The ancients, Bowen said quietly. The first wolves. The original bloodline from which all modern shifters descend. They were more than just wolves. They were conduits for raw, elemental power. They could heal with a touch, kill with a thought, bend other wolves to their will without effort. They were gods among predators. Arya stared at the illustration. They died out, or were hunted to extinction, depending on which history you believe. The last confirmed ancient was killed in the early 1700s. After that, the bloodline was considered extinct. Too powerful to be allowed to survive. Too dangerous.
Bowen's eyes met hers.
Until now. You think I'm one of them. It wasn't a question. I think your mother was. And I think she somehow traveled forward in time to protect you. To hide you from whatever killed her the first time. And I think she bound your wolf to keep you safe. Bowen closed the book with a sound like finality. But bindings don't last forever. Especially not when you're under extreme stress. The bond with me, the threat from Casimir, the adrenaline. It was enough to shatter whatever cage your mother put around your power. Arya couldn't process it. Couldn't integrate this impossible history with the life she'd lived. So, what does that make me? The most dangerous person in Los Angeles. Bowen's voice was bleak. And the most vulnerable. Because once word gets out about what you are, and it will after tonight, every pack, every alpha, every power-hungry wolf in North America is going to come for you.
Why?
Arya demanded. Why would they care? Because ancients don't just have power. Bowen's eyes were hard now, calculating. They can transfer it, bond with them, and you gain access to their strength, their healing, their abilities. It's like mainlining pure dominance. An alpha bonded to an ancient becomes unstoppable, untouchable. Understanding crashed over Arya like cold water. That's why Casimir really challenged you. Not because he wants me as a mate. Because he wants a weapon, Bowen finished.
Yes.
And he won't be the only one. The moment the other packs realize what you are, the challenges will be endless. Not just from alphas, from betas, enforcers, anyone strong enough to think they can take me in a fight. Arya's hands were shaking again. She pressed them flat against her thighs, trying to steady herself. So, I'm not a person anymore. I'm a resource. Something to be claimed and used. Not to me. Bowen's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. To me, you're... He stopped, jaw working like the words physically hurt. You're not a weapon. You're not a prize. You're just someone who got dragged into a world you didn't ask for, because my wolf made a choice I didn't get to control. But you'll still fight for me. It wasn't a question. You'll still risk your life to keep me. Yes. There was no hesitation. Because rejecting you now would be a death sentence. Casimir would take you. Someone else would challenge him. You'd be passed from alpha to alpha like currency, until someone's strong enough to keep you permanently one. And whoever that was, his voice dropped. They wouldn't treat you like a person. They'd treat you like exactly what you are to them. A tool. A means to power. Aria's throat burned. She wouldn't cry. Refused to cry. But the weight of it all, the bond she didn't choose, the power she didn't want, the target she'd become through no fault of her own, was crushing. What if I run? Leave the city. Change my name. Start over somewhere they can't find me. They'd find you. Bowen's eyes were full of centuries-old knowledge, sad and certain. Ancients have a scent. Once you're marked, once your wolf is free, you can't hide it. Wolves could track you across continents. And without a pack, without protection, you'd be easy prey. So I'm trapped. Aria's voice was flat. No matter what I choose, I lose. Yes. Bowen didn't try to soften it. I'm sorry. But that's the truth. The silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. Aria stared at the book still lying open on the table, at the illustration of the silver wolf with eyes like mirrors. Like her mother's eyes. Like her own. Did you love her? She asked suddenly.
Lyra.
My mother. Whatever she was to you. Bowen's expression cracked. She was my sister. Aria's world stopped. Not by blood, Bowen continued, his voice rough, but by choice. She was turned the same year as me. We went through the change together, learned to hunt together, survived those first brutal years together. She was family. The only family I had after I lost everything else. His hands curled into fists. When she died, I blamed myself. I was the alpha even then. Protection was my responsibility. And I failed. How did it happen? Aria's voice was barely a whisper. Hunters. Human hunters who'd figured out that silver could kill us. They ambushed a group of young wolves. Newly turned, barely in control. Lyra threw herself between them and the hunters. Bought them time to escape. By the time I got there, his voice broke. She was already gone. I carried her body into the hills and buried her where the wildflowers grew. Made sure she'd never be found. Aria's eyes burned. And now you think she came back?
Somehow.
For me. I don't know what I think. Bowen looked at her, and his eyes were raw with something that looked like hope and grief tangled together. But you're here. You have her face, her eyes, her power. And if there's even a chance that she found a way forward, that she gave up everything to protect you. He stopped, swallowed hard. Then keeping you safe isn't just about the bond. It's about honoring what she sacrificed. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. Aria pressed her hands to her face, shoulders shaking, all the fear and anger and grief of the past few days finally breaking through. She cried for the mother she'd lost too young, for the life she'd never get back, for the impossible choice she'd been forced into. Bowen moved before she could tell him not to, crossed the space between them and pulled her into his arms, solid and steady and smelling like cedarwood and safety. He didn't say anything, didn't try to fix it, just held her while she broke apart, his hand moving in slow circles against her back. I've got you, he murmured into her hair. I've got you. And for the first time since she'd woken up with a mark on her throat and her life in ruins, Aria let herself believe it might be true. When the tears finally subsided, Aria pulled back, wiping her face with a blanket. I look like a disaster. You look human, Bowen said quietly. It's not a bad thing. Aria laughed, wet and shaky. Pretty sure I'm not human anymore. Not really. No, Bowen agreed. But you're still you. That doesn't change. Aria met his eyes. Ice blue with flecks of gold, ancient and tired, and somehow still capable of softness when he thought no one was looking. What happens now? Now we prepare. Bowen's voice was steady again, back to the alpha who'd survived 2 centuries of war and loss. You train. You learn to control your wolf before she controls you. And in 3 days, I fight Casimir and anyone else stupid enough to challenge for you. And if you lose? Bowen's jaw tightened. I won't, but if you do, then you run. His voice was hard, brooking no argument. Octavia will have an escape route ready. Money. New identity. She'll get you out of the city before anyone can claim you. You disappear and you never look back. I can't just leave you to die. You can and you will. Bowen's eyes flashed gold. Because I didn't survive 180 years of emptiness just to watch someone I'm sworn to protect become a slave to whichever alpha wins. If I go down, you live. That's not negotiable. Arya wanted to argue, wanted to tell him that she wouldn't run, that she'd find a way to fight, that she refused to let him martyr himself for a bond neither of them asked for. But the look in his eyes stopped her. This was the one thing he wouldn't compromise on. The one line he'd drawn in the sand. So instead, she nodded. Okay. Okay. Bowen stood, offered her his hand. Come on. Let's get you cleaned up. Tomorrow we start training for real. No more holding back. No more taking it easy. If your wolf is awake, we need to teach her how to survive. Arya took his hand, let him pull her to her feet. The bond hummed between them, warm and steady, no longer quite so terrifying. Maybe Bowen was right. Maybe there was no way out of this that didn't end in blood and loss. But if she had to face it, at least she wouldn't face it alone. Chapter 5. The attack came at dawn. Arya had been awake for hours, unable to sleep despite the exhaustion that pulled at her bones. She'd spent the night in Bowen's study, poring over the ancient texts he'd shown her, trying to understand what she was, what she'd become. The words blurred together after a while, prophecies and bloodlines and warnings written in languages she couldn't read, but somehow understood in her gut. The sun had just started to paint the sky pink when she heard it. Not a sound exactly, more like a disturbance in the air, a wrongness that made her newly awakened wolf bristle with warning. She was on her feet before she consciously decided to move, crossing to the window that overlooked the estate's main courtyard. What she saw made her blood run cold. Wolves.
Dozens of them.
Pouring through the gates that should have been closed, should have been guarded. They moved with military precision, spreading out across the grounds in formation. And at their center, walking with the easy confidence of someone who'd already won, was Casimir. He looked different in daylight. Less monstrous, more human. Handsome, even, with sharp features and dark hair pulled back in a knot. But his eyes, pale green and cold as winter ice, held nothing but calculated cruelty. Arya's hands slammed against the glass. Bowen. He was there in seconds, materialized beside her like he'd been summoned. His hair was still wet from a shower, shirt unbuttoned, but the relaxed posture evaporated the moment he saw what she was seeing. That bastard, Bowen breathed. He came early. I thought we had 3 days. We did. Bowen's jaw clenched. He's changing the terms. Octavia. But Octavia was already bursting through the door, phone in hand, face tight with fury. He filed a formal challenge revision with the council at midnight. Claims the original terms are void because Arya's wolf has emerged. Says she's no longer unclaimed, which means he's not challenging for a mate anymore. Then what is he challenging for? Arya demanded. Bowen's eyes went black. Territory. The word landed like a death sentence. Arya looked between them, trying to understand. I don't. What does that mean? It means this isn't about you anymore, Octavia said grimly. It's a full territorial challenge. Casimir is claiming that Bowen is unfit to hold the West Side, that the pack has grown weak under his leadership, and that he has the right to take it by force. That's insane, Arya said. Bowen's pack is the strongest in the city. Not according to Casimir. Octavia pulled up something on her phone, turned it so Arya could see. It was a formal document, dense with legal language and pack law citations. He's invoking the old rights. Says that Bowen has neglected his duties, that he's been emotionally compromised by the mate bond, that his judgment is impaired. And because the bond involved an ancient, which technically makes it a matter of public safety, the council approved the challenge revision. Bowen's hands curled into fists. How many wolves does he have with him? 20, maybe 25. Octavia's eyes were hard. We have 32 in the estate right now, but half of them are support staff.
Cooks.
Admin. not fighters. Then we're outnumbered where it counts. Bowen moved away from the window, his mind clearly racing through strategies. Get everyone into the safe room. Non-combatants first. Then, Alpha. A young wolf Arya recognized as Flynn burst into the study, chest heaving. They're demanding entry. They have council sanction. We can't legally refuse them without forfeiting the territory automatically, Bowen finished. I know. Tell them I'll meet them in the courtyard. 5 minutes. Flynn nodded and disappeared. Bowen turned to Arya, and his expression was harder than she'd ever seen it. You stay here. Lock the door. Don't come out no matter what you hear. Like hell, Arya shot back. If this is about me, I should be there. This stopped being about you the moment Casimir changed the terms. Bowen's voice was sharp, commanding. This is pack business now. Alpha business. And you're not ready. My wolf broke Casimir's nose 2 days ago. I think I'm ready enough. Breaking a nose and surviving a territorial war are different things. Bowen stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. Arya, listen to me. If I lose this fight, you run. Octavia has a car waiting. She'll get you out. But if you're in that courtyard when things go bad, neither of us will be able to protect you. You'll be a liability. The word stung, but Arya knew he was right. Knew that her newly emerged wolf, powerful as she might be, was still untrained, still volatile.
Fine.
But I'm watching from the window. And if you die, I'm not running. I'm coming down there. Arya. That's not negotiable. She held his gaze, refusing to back down. You don't get to martyr yourself and expect me to just disappear. If we're bonded, then we face this together, one way or another. Something shifted in Bowen's expression. Not quite softness, but close. He reached out, his hand cupping her face with a gentleness that seemed impossible for someone so dangerous. You're going to be the death of me. Join the club, Arya said. Apparently, everyone wants that job. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. Then he was gone, moving with that inhuman speed, Octavia at his heels. Arya pressed herself against the window, watching as Bowen emerged into the courtyard below. His pack materialized around him, fewer than she'd hoped. Octavia at his right hand, a handful of wolves she recognized from training sessions, and a few she'd only seen in passing. They formed a loose semicircle behind their alpha, tense and ready. Casimir stood across from them, his own wolves fanned out in a mirror formation. He was smiling. Actually smiling, like this was all a game he'd already won. Bowen Kale, Casimir's voice carried clearly in the morning air. I challenge your right to this territory under the old laws. Do you accept? I accept. Bowen's voice was cold, empty of emotion. But you're making a mistake, Casimir. This isn't just about territory. This is about power you don't understand and can't control. You mean the ancient? Casimir's smile widened. Oh, I understand perfectly. You found yourself a weapon and you're too soft to use her properly. But I won't make that mistake. When I kill you, she'll transfer to me. And with her power added to mine, there won't be a pack in North America that can challenge me. She's not a weapon. She's whatever I decide she is once you're dead. Bowen's body language shifted, subtle but unmistakable. He was done talking. Then let's finish this. What happened next was too fast for Arya's human eyes to fully track. One moment they were standing apart. The next, they were colliding in a blur of motion and violence. Fur erupted. Bones cracked and reformed. Within seconds, 2 massive wolves stood where the men had been. Bowen's coat dark as midnight, Casimir's a mottled gray-brown. They circled each other, growling low, looking for openings. Then Casimir lunged. The fight that followed was brutal. Primal. They tore into each other with savage efficiency, all teeth and claws and blood. The other wolves held their positions, tense, but not interfering. This was alpha business.
Sacred.
Only the 2 of them could end it. Bowen was faster, more experienced. But Casimir was younger, his movements fueled by ambition and hunger. They were evenly matched in ways that made Aria's stomach clench with fear. Minutes stretched into eternity. Aria's nails dug into her palms as she watched Bowen take hit after hit, watched blood mat his dark fur, watched him keep getting back up even when it seemed impossible. And then everything went wrong. One of Bowen's own wolves, Soren, a beta Aria had trained with just yesterday, moved. Not to help Bowen. To hurt him. He shifted mid-step, pulling something from his jacket. Something that gleamed silver in the dawn light. A blade. Bowen. Aria's scream was swallowed by the glass between them. But Bowen heard something. Some warning through the bond or his own instincts. He turned just as Soren struck, just enough that the blade meant for his heart buried itself in his ribs instead. Bowen's wolf form flickered. He crashed to the ground, half-shifted, blood pouring from the wound. "I'm sorry, Alpha," Soren said, and he actually sounded like he meant it. "But you've been dead inside for 2 centuries. It's time for new blood. Time for a leader who actually wants to lead." The courtyard erupted. Bowen's wolves surged forward, but Casimir's pack was ready. The fight spread, chaotic and vicious. Bodies collided. Blood sprayed across pristine stone. And in the center of it all, Bowen was dying. Aria felt it through the bond. Felt his life force dimming like a candle in the wind. Felt his pain echo through her own body, sharp and devastating. Something inside her broke. Not broke.
Shattered.
The scream that tore from her throat wasn't human. It wasn't even close. It was pure wolf, pure rage, pure power. The windows exploded outward in a cascade of glass. The walls shook. Every wolf in the courtyard, friend and enemy alike, dropped to their knees, clutching their heads against the psychic assault. Aria didn't remember leaving the study. Didn't remember running down the stairs. One moment she was at the window, the next she was in the courtyard, and her body was tearing itself apart. The transformation was agony. Her bones snapped and reformed. Her skin split and healed. Her muscles screamed as they restructured themselves into something new, something other. Silver light poured from her in waves, so bright it hurt to look at. When the light faded, Aria was gone. In her place stood a wolf unlike anything that had ever walked the earth. Massive, easily twice the size of any wolf in the courtyard. Her coat was pure silver white, each hair seeming to glow with its own internal light. Her eyes were molten mercury, ancient and terrible. She was magnificent, feral, absolutely unstoppable. And she was done being anyone's victim. The wolves that had dropped to their knees were scrambling backward now, their instincts screaming at them to run, to submit, to do anything but face the creature standing before them. But Aria's wolf wasn't interested in submission. She wanted blood. Casimir's wolves broke first. Half of them shifted and ran, disappearing through the gates with their tails literally between their legs. The ones that stayed did so out of fear of their alpha's punishment, not bravery. Aria's attention locked onto Soren, the traitor who'd stabbed Bowen while his back was turned. He was trying to crawl away, still in human form, leaving a trail of his own blood where Octavia had slashed him across the chest. Aria moved. Not fast, she didn't need speed when she had inevitability. She stalked toward him with the patience of a predator that knew its prey had nowhere left to run. "Wait." Soren held up his hands. "Wait, please, I didn't have a choice. Casimir said if I didn't help him, he'd kill my sister. He has her, please." Aria's wolf didn't care about excuses. Didn't care about coercion or threats or family. She cared about one thing. Bowen was hurt. And this male was responsible. She grabbed Soren by the throat. Not to kill, not yet. Just to drag him back to the center of the courtyard where everyone could see. Where everyone would learn what happened to those who betrayed their alpha. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered. Maybe Octavia. Maybe Flynn. Aria wasn't sure and didn't care. Casimir was still in wolf form, still standing, though his posture had changed. No longer confident. Now wary, calculating. He'd wanted an ancient. Now he was facing one. And he was realizing, too late, that ancient power and controllable power were not the same thing. He shifted back to human, hands raised in a gesture that might have been peace or surrender. Easy now. Let's talk about this. I know you're angry, but... Arya dropped Soren and turned her attention to Casimir. Her lips pulled back from teeth that were too large, too sharp, glowing faintly with that same silver light. Casimir took a step back. I was only following pack law. The old rights are clear. Any alpha can challenge for territory if... Arya's growl cut him off. It was a sound that resonated in the chest, in the bones, in the primal part of the brain that remembered when humans were prey and wolves were gods. Okay, Casimir said, his voice tight. Okay. Message received. I'll withdraw the challenge. We'll leave. No harm, no. Arya lunged. She was done with words. Done with laws and challenges and power plays. Done with men deciding her fate without her consent. If Casimir wanted to fight for territory, if he wanted to claim power, then he could face the consequences of that ambition. They collided with a force that cracked the courtyard stone. Casimir shifted mid-impact, his wolf form erupting to meet hers. But he was outmatched, and he knew it. Arya's jaws closed around his throat. Not enough to kill, but enough to dominate. Enough to make him submit. He fought anyway. Desperation made him reckless. His claws raked across her shoulder, drawing blood that glowed silver before the wounds sealed themselves. His teeth snapped at her ears, her legs, anywhere he could reach. Arya barely felt it. The wolf in control now was ancient, powerful beyond measure, and absolutely merciless. She'd been bound for decades.
Caged.
Silenced. And now she was free, and she would not be put back in a cage. Not by Casimir. Not by anyone. She threw him across the courtyard. He hit the wall hard enough to crack stone, slid to the ground in a heap. Before he could recover, she was on him again, pinning him down with her greater mass. Stop. One of Casimir's wolves, a female with red hair and panic in her eyes. Please, he yields. He yields. But Casimir's pride wouldn't let him say the words. Even pinned, even bleeding, he snarled defiance. Arya's jaws tightened. She could feel his pulse against her teeth. Feel how easy it would be to just bite down. End him. End the threat. Make sure he never challenged anyone again.
Arya.
Bowen's voice, weak but steady. Arya, stop. She froze. Her wolf didn't want to stop. Wanted to finish this. Wanted to make an example that would echo through every pack in North America. Let him go, Bowen said, closer now. She could smell his blood, smell his pain. You've won. He submitted whether he says it or not. Let him go. Arya's wolf resisted, fought against the command. But Bowen's presence, his scent, his voice, the bond that tied them together, was stronger than bloodlust. Slowly, reluctantly, she released Casimir. He gasped, rolling away, hand to his throat. His own wolves rushed forward to help him, to drag him back toward the gates. He didn't look at Arya again.
Didn't speak.
Just let himself be carried away like the defeated thing he was. When the last of Casimir's pack had fled through the gates, silence fell over the courtyard. Every remaining wolf was staring at Arya. Not with fear, exactly.
With awe.
With reverence. She was still in wolf form, still massive and glowing and terrible. But now that the threat was gone, now that the rage was fading, she could feel herself again. Feel the human part of her consciousness swimming back to the surface. The shift back was easier than the shift out had been. Her body knew what to do now. Bones reformed. Fur receded. Light dimmed. And then she was standing on two legs again, naked and shaking and absolutely exhausted. Someone, Octavia, threw a blanket around her shoulders. Arya clutched it, trying to cover herself, trying to process what had just happened. Holy hell, Octavia breathed. That was the most terrifying thing I've ever seen. And I've been alive for 50 years. Arya's legs gave out. She would have hit the ground if Octavia hadn't caught her, lowered her down gently. Bowen, where's? Right here. He was beside her, still bleeding, still half-shifted, but alive. Gloriously, impossibly alive. You insane, magnificent woman. You could have been killed. So could you. Arya shot back, her voice hoarse. That was the deal, remember? We face things together. Bowen laughed. It sounded painful but genuine. Remind me never to piss you off. Too late. But Arya was smiling through her exhaustion. You already called me a liability. I was wrong. Bowen's hand found hers, squeezed gently. You're not a liability. You're the most powerful wolf I've ever seen. And you just saved my life. Again. Around them, the pack was starting to move. Tending to the wounded. Checking the perimeter. But every single one of them, at some point, looked back at Arya with that same expression. That same mix of awe and fear and respect. She'd proven herself today. In blood and power. She wasn't just the alpha's mate anymore. She was something far more dangerous. She was a force of nature. And the entire supernatural world had just been put on notice. Chapter 6. The aftermath of the fight took hours to clean up. Bodies had to be moved. None dead, thankfully, but several injured badly enough that they needed hospital care. The kind of care that required very specific doctors who understood that gunshot wounds and knife lacerations were far easier to explain than claw marks and bite wounds that healed too fast. Octavia made the calls, her voice steady and efficient as she coordinated transport and cover stories. The courtyard itself looked like a war zone. Blood splattered across stone that had been pristine that morning. Broken windows glittered in the afternoon sun. The wall where Casimir had hit bore a crater-sized impact mark that would require serious explaining to anyone who wasn't Pac. Arya watched it all from Bowen's study window, still wrapped in the blanket someone had given her, still trying to process what she'd done, what she'd become. Her body ached in ways she didn't have words for. Not pain, exactly, but the echo of transformation. Like her bones remembered being broken and reformed and weren't quite sure they trusted her not to do it again. Bowen had been taken away by the pack doctor, a stern woman named Dr. Yara, who'd taken one look at the silver blade wound in his ribs and started cursing in what sounded like Arabic. She'd ordered him into the medical suite, threatened to sedate him if he resisted, and somehow managed to make a 2-century-old alpha comply with nothing but a sharp look and sharper words. That had been 2 hours ago. Arya hadn't seen him since, hadn't heard from him, and the silence was starting to make her anxious in ways the fight hadn't. The bond was still there. She could feel it, warm and steady in her chest, proof that he was alive. But it felt different now. Stronger, maybe. Or just more real. Like the violence had burned away whatever pretense they'd been hiding behind and left nothing but raw truth. She was still staring out the window when the door opened behind her. She didn't turn.
Didn't need to.
She knew his scent by now, knew the particular weight of his footsteps. You're supposed to be resting, Arya said. So are you. Bowen's voice was rough, tired. Dr. Yara cleared me. Mostly. With several strongly worded warnings about not being an idiot. Did you listen to any of them? Not even a little. Arya turned then. He looked better than she'd feared, showered, changed into clean clothes, the wound in his ribs hidden beneath a fresh shirt. But his face was drawn, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion that went deeper than physical injury. How bad is it? She asked. I'll live. Bowen crossed to the liquor cabinet, poured 2 glasses of whiskey without asking if she wanted one. Silver wounds take longer to heal, but Dr. Yara says I'll be fine in a few days. No permanent damage. He handed her a glass. Their fingers brushed, and Arya felt that same electric jolt she'd felt the first time they'd touched. The bond recognizing itself, celebrating that they'd both survived. Soren, she asked quietly. Locked up. Octavia's interrogating him now. Bowen's jaw tightened. He claims Casimir was holding his sister hostage. Threatened to kill her if he didn't help with the coup. We're trying to verify the story, but it doesn't change what he did.
No.
Bowen took a long drink. It doesn't. He betrayed his alpha. Broke sacred trust. Even if his reasons were sympathetic, the law is clear. He'll stand trial. And if the pack finds him guilty, he stopped. Shook his head. It won't be pretty. Aria's stomach twisted. She didn't like Soren, couldn't forgive what he'd done, but she also understood desperation. Understood making terrible choices to protect the people you loved. What will you do? Follow pack law. Let the council decide. Bowen looked at her, and something in his expression softened. But that's not why I came to find you. I wanted. He paused, like the words physically hurt. I wanted to make sure you were okay. After everything. I turned into a giant glowing wolf and nearly murdered someone in your courtyard, Arya said flatly. I'm not sure, okay, is the word I'd use. You saved my life. You keep saying that like it's a good thing. Arya set her untouched whiskey down on the windowsill. But all I did was prove everyone right. I'm dangerous. Unstable. Exactly the kind of weapon they all think I am. You're not a weapon. Bowen's voice was firm, brooking no argument. You're a person who accessed power. She didn't know she had to protect someone he stopped. Cleared his throat. Someone who mattered. There's a difference. Arya's chest tightened. Is there? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like I just became the most dangerous thing in Los Angeles. Every pack is going to be talking about what happened today. About the ancient who destroyed an alpha in front of his own wolves. About the silver wolf who's bonded to you. Let them talk. Bowen moved closer, and Arya could feel the heat radiating off him, smell the cedar and rain scent that had become so familiar. You think I care what the other packs say? You think I give a damn about politics after what just happened? You should. Arya forced herself to meet his eyes. Because this isn't over, Bowen. Casimir might have retreated, but he's not going to forget. And neither will anyone else who wants to use me for power. The challenges are just beginning. I know. Bowen's hand came up, hesitated for a moment, then cupped her face with a gentleness that made her throat burn. But we'll face them. Together. Like you said. That was before I almost got you killed. I've been almost killed more times than I can count. His thumb brushed her cheekbone, a touch so soft it barely registered. This was just another Tuesday. Don't joke about this. I'm not joking. Bowen's eyes were serious now, intense. I'm telling you the truth. I've survived 2 centuries of war, betrayal, and loss. I've faced down enemies you can't imagine. And yes, today was bad. But we're both still standing. That counts for something. Arya wanted to believe him, wanted to lean into his touch and let herself feel safe for just a moment. But the fear was still there, coiled tight in her chest. What if next time we're not? What if next time the person who dies is you? Or me? Or someone we care about? Then we deal with it. Bowen's voice was steady, certain. But we don't run from it. We don't hide. We face it head-on, because that's the only way to survive in this world. That's not surviving, Arya whispered. That's just waiting to die. Maybe. Bowen's other hand came up, framing her face now, forcing her to look at him. But it's the only way I know how to live. The only way I've been living for 200 years. And if I'm going to keep doing it, I'd rather do it with you than alone. The words hit like a physical blow. Arya's eyes burned, but she refused to cry. Refused to show that kind of weakness even though they were alone, even though he'd just laid himself bare in a way she suspected he hadn't done in centuries. Why? She asked, her voice cracking. Why me? You could have rejected the bond. Could have found a way to break it. Consequences be damned. Why didn't you? Bowen was quiet for a long moment. His hands stayed on her face, warm and steady, anchoring her in place. When he finally spoke, his voice was so soft she almost missed. Edit. Because when you fell asleep on my shoulder that night, I felt something I hadn't felt since Elspeth died. Something I thought I'd never feel again. What? Hope. The word came out rough, like it hurt to say. Just for a second. Just a flicker. But it was there. And he stopped jaw working. I couldn't let it go. Even when I knew I should. Even when I knew it would be safer for both of us if I walked away. I couldn't do it. Aria's hands came up, covered his where they rested against her face. That's not hope, Bowen. That's desperation. Maybe they're the same thing. His eyes searched hers, raw and vulnerable in a way that made her chest ache. Maybe after 2 centuries of feeling nothing, I can't tell the difference anymore. But I know that when I thought I was going to die today, when Soren drove that blade into me, the only thing I could think about was you. Not my pack. Not my territory.
You.
Aria's breath caught. That's the bond talking. Is it? Bowen's voice dropped lower, more intense. Because I've had 200 years to understand what bonds feel like. What they do to you. And this, what I feel when I look at you, it's not just magical compulsion. It's not just wolf biology. It's something else. Something I don't have words for. Try. He was quiet again, his brow furrowed like he was searching for language that had been buried for too long. It's like waking up, he said finally. Like I've been walking through the world half asleep for 2 centuries, going through the motions, and then you showed up and suddenly I can feel again.
Pain.
Anger.
Fear.
But also, he paused. Also things I thought I'd forgotten how to feel. Like what? Like wanting to hear someone laugh. Like caring if they're safe. Like being terrified that something might take them away before I've had enough time to. He stopped abruptly, shaking his head. I don't know. Before I've had enough time. That's all. Aria's heart was hammering so hard, she was sure he could hear it. Bowen. I'm not asking you to feel the same way, he said quickly. I know this bond was forced on you. I know you didn't choose any of this. And I know I'm probably the last person you'd pick if you had a choice. I'm old. Damaged. Emotionally unavailable on a good day. But I need you to know that when I look at you, I don't see a weapon. I don't see a liability. I see someone who survived impossible things and came out sarcastic and strong and absolutely refusing to be broken. And that, his voice cracked. That's worth fighting for. You're worth fighting for. The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. Aria pressed her face into his chest, felt his arms come around her, solid and safe and real. I hate you, she mumbled into his shirt. I know. I hate that you make me feel things. I hate that I care if you die. I hate that this stupid bond has turned my life into a supernatural soap opera. I know, he said again, softer this time. But I also... Aria pulled back, just enough to look up at him. I also think maybe you're not the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Even if you are an emotionally constipated ancient werewolf with terrible timing. Bowen's mouth twitched. Emotionally constipated? Would you prefer emotionally unavailable? I prefer neither, but I'll take emotionally constipated if it means you're staying. Aria's hands fisted in his shirt. I don't know if I have a choice. The bond. Forget the bond. Bowen's voice was fierce now. Just for a minute. Forget pack law and ancient bloodlines and everything else. If you could choose, if you had complete freedom to walk away right now with no consequences, would you? Aria opened her mouth to say yes. To tell him that of course she'd walk away, go back to her old life, pretend none of this had happened. But the words wouldn't come. Because standing here, wrapped in his arms, feeling his heartbeat against her cheek, she realized something terrifying. She didn't want to leave. Not because of the bond. Not because of the danger waiting outside. But because somewhere between falling asleep on a stranger's shoulder and waking up as a giant silver wolf, she'd started to care about him. About this grumpy, broken, 200-year-old man who'd forgotten how to be anything but empty until she'd crashed into his life. I don't know, she admitted finally. A week ago, I would have said yes without thinking. But now, she looked up at him. Now I think maybe I want to see what happens if we actually try. If we stop fighting the bond in each other, and just see where this goes. Bowen's eyes closed. When they opened again, they were suspiciously bright. You're going to regret that. Probably. Aria managed a shaky smile. But I've made worse decisions. At least this one comes with dental. He laughed. Actually laughed. Deep and genuine, and so unexpected that Aria felt her own smile widen in response. There it is, she said softly. That's twice in one day. I'm on a roll. Don't get cocky. But he was still smiling, and the sight of it did something complicated to Aria's chest. They stood there for a long moment, just holding each other, the afternoon light painting everything gold. Outside, she could hear the pack moving around, cleaning up, rebuilding. Inside, it was just the two of them and the tentative, fragile thing growing between them. We should probably talk about what happens next, Arya said eventually. The council. The other packs. Whatever political nightmare this is going to create. Tomorrow. Bowen's arms tightened around her. Right now, I just want to stand here and remember what it feels like to hold someone I care about. Is that okay? Arya's throat burned.
Yeah.
That's okay. So they did. They stood in the golden light and held each other, while the world outside continued to turn. And for just a little while, the danger and the politics and the impossible future could wait. Because right now, in this moment, they were both alive. They were both here. And that was enough. When Octavia knocked on the door an hour later, they were still there.
Still holding on.
Still choosing each other despite every logical reason not to. Sorry to interrupt, Octavia said, though her expression suggested she wasn't sorry at all. But we have a situation. The High Council just called. They want to meet with both of you. Tomorrow night. Bowen's jaw tightened, but he didn't let go of Arya. What do they want? To discuss the ancient situation. Octavia's eyes flicked to Arya. And to determine whether you're a threat to the established order. Apparently, destroying an alpha in front of witnesses raised some concerns. Of course it did, Arya muttered. They can't touch her, Bowen said flatly. She's under my protection. She's my mate. They have no jurisdiction. They're the High Council, Octavia countered. They have jurisdiction over everything. And they're invoking old law, which means you have to appear. Both of you. Or they'll consider it a forfeit. A forfeit of what? Octavia's expression was grim. Everything. Your territory. Your pack. Your life. They're calling it a reckoning. And there's no way to refuse without starting a war that would tear every pack in North America apart. Bowen looked down at Arya, and she could see the calculation in his eyes. The weighing of options. The cold, strategic thinking that had kept him alive for 2 centuries. But when he spoke, his voice was warm.
Certain.
Then we'll go. Together. And we'll face whatever they throw at us. Because that's what we do now. Arya nodded, even though her stomach was churning with fear.
Together.
Together, Bowen echoed. And somehow, impossibly, Arya believed him. Chapter 7. 2 weeks of relative peace was apparently all the universe was willing to give them. Arya had just finished a brutal training session with Octavia, learning to shift without destroying everything in a 50-foot radius. When Flynn came running into the estate's underground training facility, his face was pale, his hands shaking as he held out a cream-colored envelope sealed with dark red wax. "This just arrived," he said, breathless. Courier wouldn't say who sent it, just that it was urgent.
For both of you.
Bowen took the envelope, examined the seal. His expression went carefully blank in that way Arya had learned meant he was furious, but trying not to show it. He broke the seal with his thumb and pulled out a single sheet of heavy parchment. Arya watched his eyes move across the text, watched the muscle in his jaw tick, watched his hands tighten on the paper until she heard it crinkle. "What is it?" she asked, though she already knew it wouldn't be good. "The High Council." Bowen's voice was flat, emotionless. "They're requesting our presence.
3 days from now.
In San Francisco." Requesting or demanding? With the council, there's no difference. He handed her the letter. The language was formal, archaic, full of phrases like "hereby summoned" and "matter of continental importance," and failure to appear will be considered an act of rebellion against established pack law. But the meaning was clear enough. They wanted Arya. "They're calling it a tribunal," Octavia said quietly. She'd appeared at Bowen's shoulder, reading over his arm. "That's council speak for a trial. They want to determine if Arya poses a threat to the supernatural order." Arya's stomach turned to ice. A threat? I haven't done anything except defend myself. You're an ancient who destroyed an alpha in front of witnesses, Octavia said, not unkindly. You showed power that most wolves didn't think existed anymore. That terrifies them. Terrified people make terrified decisions. So what do they want? To lock me up? Study me. Bowen's silence was answer enough. Aria's hands curled into fists. They want to kill me. They want options, Bowen corrected, but his voice was tight.
Kill you.
Bind your wolf permanently so you can never shift again. Or, he stopped. Or what? Or claim you as council property. Make you a weapon they can control and deploy as they see fit. Bowen's eyes met hers, and they were full of a rage so cold it burned. None of those options are acceptable. Then we don't go, Arya said. We refuse. If we refuse, they'll consider it an act of war. Octavia's voice was grim. The council has authority over all North American packs. If Bowen defies them, they'll strip his territory, disband his pack, and put a price on both your heads that every wolf from Alaska to Mexico will be racing to collect. So we're trapped. Aria's voice was hollow. Again.
No.
Bowen set the letter down with deliberate care. We go. We face them. And we make them understand that you're not a threat they need to eliminate. You're a person they need to leave alone. And if they don't agree? Bowen's eyes flashed gold. Then we make them regret it. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Octavia drilled Arya on council protocol, how to address high alphas, when to speak and when to stay silent, the ancient laws that governed pack hierarchy. Bowen spent hours on the phone with allies, calling in favors, building a political defense that might protect them if things went wrong. Arya trained harder than she ever had. Pushed her wolf to shift faster, cleaner, with more control. She couldn't afford to lose control in front of the council. Couldn't afford to prove them right about her being dangerous. On the third day, they flew to San Francisco in Bowen's private jet. Arya had never been on a private plane before. Under different circumstances, she might have enjoyed it. But the weight of what they were flying toward made everything else meaningless. The council convened in an old mansion in Pacific Heights, a sprawling estate that looked like it belonged in a historical register but thrummed with supernatural power. Guards lined the entrance, all of them wolves, all of them watching Arya like she might explode at any moment. Inside, the mansion had been converted into something between a courthouse and a cathedral.
High ceilings. Dark wood paneling.
And at the far end of the main hall, 3 ornate chairs that might as well have been thrones. The high alphas sat in those chairs like ancient kings. 2 men and 1 woman, all of them radiating power that made Arya's wolf press close to the surface, wary and tense. The woman in the center was clearly the leader. She looked to be in her 40s, but Arya knew appearances meant nothing with wolves this old. She had sharp cheekbones, silver-streaked black hair pulled back in a severe bun, and eyes like chips of obsidian. Her presence filled the room, oppressive and absolute. Bowen Kale, she said, her voice cultured and cold. It's been quite some time, Seraphine. Bowen's tone was respectful, but not submissive. I see the council is still fond of dramatic venues. We prefer to call it respect for tradition. Seraphine's gaze shifted to Arya, and the weight of it was crushing. And this is the ancient, the one who's caused so much disruption. Arya lifted her chin, refusing to look away. My name is Arya Castellano, and I didn't ask to disrupt anything. Few threats do. Seraphine's expression didn't change, which is precisely why we're here. To determine what you are, and what must be done about you. The alpha to Seraphine's right leaned forward. He was older, his hair fully white, his face lined with age. The last confirmed ancient died in 1723. We hunted them to extinction because they posed an existential threat to our kind. Too powerful to coexist with. Too dangerous to control. And now you appear, seemingly from nowhere, with abilities that haven't been seen in 3 centuries. I didn't choose this, Arya said. My wolf was bound when I was a child. I didn't even know what I was until 2 weeks ago. Ignorance doesn't negate danger. The third alpha spoke now, younger than the others, maybe 60 or 70, with a scar that ran from his temple to his jaw. You destroyed an alpha without training, without effort. What happens when you learn to use that power deliberately? What happens when you decide that our laws don't apply to you? I'm not planning to decide anything, Arya shot back. I just want to live my life without being hunted or used or killed for something I didn't ask for. A sentiment we can all appreciate, Seraphine said. But wanting something and being allowed to have it are very different things. The council exists to maintain balance, to ensure that no single wolf becomes powerful enough to threaten the collective. And you, child, are the definition of that threat. Bowen stepped forward, positioning himself slightly in front of Arya. She's under my protection, bonded to me. Whatever judgment you pass, it goes through me first. Your protection means nothing here, the white-haired alpha said. The council supersedes all pack bonds, all territorial claims, all personal loyalties. That's the law you swore to uphold when you became an alpha, Bowen. Or have you forgotten? I haven't forgotten anything. Bowen's voice was dangerously quiet, including the fact that the council exists to serve the packs, not rule them. You want to judge Arya?
Fine. But you do it fairly.
With evidence, not fear. Fear is evidence, Seraphine said. When a threat is existential, when the danger is absolute, fear is the only rational response. And make no mistake, an unbound ancient is an absolute danger. Then bind me again. The words came out of Arya's mouth before she'd fully thought them through. If that's what it takes. If that's the only way to prove I'm not a threat. Bind my wolf and let me go back to being normal.
No.
Bowen's hand closed around her wrist, tight enough to hurt. Absolutely not. It's my choice. It's torture. Bowen's eyes were blazing. Binding a wolf doesn't just suppress it. It cages it, slowly suffocates it. You'd spend the rest of your life feeling like something vital was missing, like you couldn't breathe properly. I've seen wolves who were bound. They don't live. They exist. And I won't let you do that to yourself. Then, what's your solution? Seraphine asked. Because from where I sit, the options are limited. We bind her. We eliminate her. Or we claim her as council property and ensure she's never free to threaten the order we've spent millennia building. Or, Arya said slowly, an idea forming even as terror clawed at her throat, I prove to you that I'm not a threat. Seraphine's eyebrow arched. And how do you propose to do that? A challenge. Arya's heart was hammering, but her voice was steady. A test of will. If I'm as dangerous as you think, if I'm unstable and uncontrollable, then I won't be able to hold my own against you. But if I can face you and prove that I have control, that I'm not the monster you think I am, then you leave me alone. No binding. No execution. No claiming. You let me live my life. The room went silent. Bowen's hand on her wrist tightened to the point of pain. Arya, don't do this. It's the only way. She didn't look at him, kept her eyes locked on Seraphine. Unless you have a better idea. I have several, Bowen hissed. Starting with us walking out of here right now. And starting a war, Arya reminded him. Getting her pack destroyed. Getting hunted for the rest of our lives.
No.
This ends here, one way or another. Seraphine was studying her with something that might have been respect, or might have been curiosity. Hard to tell. You understand what you're proposing? A psychic challenge against a high alpha who's been alive for over 400 years? A wolf who's broken stronger minds than yours. I understand. Arya's mouth was dry, but she didn't waver. Do you accept? For a long moment, Seraphine didn't answer. The other two alphas leaned in, whispering to her in voices too low for Arya to hear. Finally, Seraphine nodded. Very well. I accept your challenge. We'll conduct the trial in the traditional way, a battle of wills in the psychic plane. No physical violence. Just pure dominance. First one to break loses. Her smile was sharp. And when you lose, child, You'll submit to whatever judgment the council deems appropriate. Are those terms acceptable? Aria's throat was tight, but she forced the words out. Acceptable. Then we begin now. Everything happened too fast after that. The guards cleared the room of everyone except the three high alphas, Bowen, Octavia, and Aria. Seraphine descended from her throne chair, moving with a predator's grace. She gestured to the center of the hall, where someone had drawn a circle in what looked like silver dust. Stand in the circle, Seraphine instructed. Once we begin, you won't be able to leave it until one of us submits or breaks. There's no timeout. No mercy. No second chances. This is your last opportunity to withdraw. Aria looked at Bowen. His face was a mask of fury and fear, his hands clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. Don't do this, he said quietly.
Please.
We'll find another way. There is no other way. Aria reached up, touched his face. You know that. This is the only choice that doesn't end with someone I care about getting hurt. You might get hurt, then you'll put me back together. She tried to smile, but it felt wrong on her face. That's what mates do, right? Bowen pulled her into his arms, held her so tight she could barely breathe. If she breaks you, he whispered against her hair, if she hurts you in any way, I will burn the council to the ground. I don't care what it costs me. I know. Aria pressed her face into his chest for just a moment, breathing in assent, anchoring herself. But I'm not going to break. I'm too stubborn for that. Damn right you are. He pulled back, cupped her face, and kissed her forehead with a gentleness that made her throat burn. Win this. Come back to me. Planning on it. Aria stepped away from him and walked into the silver circle. The moment her feet crossed the threshold, she felt something shift. The air grew thicker, heavier, charged with power that made her skin prickle. Seraphine entered the circle from the opposite side. Up close, she was even more intimidating.
Tall.
Ancient. Radiating dominance that pressed against Aria's consciousness like a physical weight. Last chance, Seraphine said. I'm not backing down. So be it. Seraphine's eyes closed. And then, without warning, Aria felt the world drop away. The psychic plane wasn't a place, exactly. It was more like a space between spaces, a void where consciousness met consciousness without the filter of physical reality. And in that void, Seraphine was a titan, a towering column of flame and fury, built from 4 centuries of dominance and power. She blazed like a star, impossible to look at directly, overwhelming in scope. Aria was a candle by comparison.
Small.
Flickering. Barely there. You see the difference now? Seraphine's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. This is what 400 years of power looks like. This is what you're challenging. So I'll ask you one final time. Submit.
Bend.
Let me show you mercy before I break you. Aria felt her consciousness wavering under the pressure. Felt herself starting to fold, to collapse inward, to do exactly what Seraphine wanted. But then she thought about Bowen. About the way he'd looked at her when he thought she was going to leave. About the pack that had accepted her despite not owing her anything. About her mother, Lyra, who'd given up everything to protect her daughter's future. And she thought about herself. About Aria Castellano, who'd survived foster care and dead-end jobs and a life that tried to break her long before any werewolf showed up. About the woman who'd learned to smile while planning murder, who'd developed a sharp tongue as armor, who'd refused to let the world make her small. That woman didn't break. That woman fought back. Aria's consciousness flared. Not as bright as Seraphine's, not even close, but steady, unshakable, a silver flame that refused to be snuffed out. You're right, Aria said, her voice echoing back at the Titan of Fire. I'm nothing compared to you. I'm new, untrained. I have no idea what I'm doing. Then submit. But here's the thing about being nothing, Aria continued, and her flame burned brighter. Nothing has nothing to lose. Nothing can't be threatened. Nothing doesn't care about politics or power or ancient laws. Nothing just is. And you can't break something that's already been broken and rebuilt a dozen times. She pushed back. Not with power. She didn't have enough for that. But with stubborn, relentless refusal. With the same energy that had kept her going through every terrible foster home, every dismissive boss, every person who'd looked at her and decided she didn't matter. Seraphine's flame roared hotter, pressing down with crushing force. You're a genetic accident. A fluke. You don't belong in this world. Funny. Arya gasped, her consciousness straining under the weight. I was just thinking the same thing about outdated tyrants who think fear is the only way to lead. Insolent child. I'm not a child. Arya's flame pulsed, grew slightly larger. I'm a woman who survived things you can't imagine. And if you think you can intimidate me with threats and power plays, you haven't been paying attention. The pressure increased. Arya felt her consciousness starting to fracture, felt cracks forming in her defenses. But she didn't pull back. Didn't retreat. She just held her ground, inch by agonizing inch, refusing to give Seraphine the satisfaction of an easy victory. Minutes passed. Maybe hours.
Time didn't work the same in this space.
All Arya knew was pain and pressure, and the burning determination not to break. You're nothing, Seraphine hissed, but there was something different in her voice now. Something that might have been surprise. Or respect. Nothing but a stubborn fool. Maybe, Arya said through gritted teeth. But I'm a stubborn fool who's still standing. And she was. Despite everything, despite the overwhelming difference in power, she hadn't broken, hadn't submitted. She was battered, exhausted, her consciousness barely holding together. But she was still there. Seraphine's flame flickered.
Just barely.
Just enough. And then, impossibly, she withdrew. The pressure vanished. The void collapsed. And Arya found herself back in her body, on her knees in the silver circle, gasping for air like she'd been drowning. Seraphine stood across from her, also breathing hard, one hand pressed to her temple. The other two high alphas were on their feet, staring in disbelief. Impossible, the white-haired alpha breathed. No one holds against Seraphine for more than 5 minutes. She lasted. 10 minutes, the scarred alpha said. I was counting. Seraphine's eyes met Arya's across the circle. For a long moment neither spoke. Then, slowly, Seraphine inclined her head.
Just barely.
But it was there. Impressive, she said quietly. You didn't win. But you didn't break. That's rare. Arya tried to stand, stumbled, felt Bowen catch her before she hit the ground. He pulled her out of the circle, his hands shaking as they ran over her, checking for injuries. You insane, magnificent idiot, he muttered. You could have died. But I didn't. Arya's voice was hoarse, raw. And I didn't break. So what now? She looked at Seraphine. Do I pass your test? Seraphine was silent for a long moment, conferring with the other two alphas in whispers Arya was too exhausted to parse. Finally, she turned back. You may live, Seraphine said. For now. You've proven that you possess control, that you're not the mindless threat we feared. But understand this, Arya Castellano, the Council will be watching you. If you step out of line, if you use your power to threaten the order we've built, we will act. And next time there will be no test. No mercy. Only judgment. Gee, thanks, Arya muttered. Your compassion is overwhelming. Seraphine's mouth twitched. It might have been a smile. You have your freedom. Don't waste it. And Bowen, she looked at him. Control your mate, or we'll do it for you. She doesn't need to be controlled, Bowen said coldly. She needs to be respected. Try to remember the difference. Seraphine didn't answer, just gestured to the guards, who opened the doors. The audience was over. Bowen didn't wait for further dismissal. He scooped Arya up and carried her out of the hall, through the mansion, into the cold San Francisco night. Octavia followed, her face a mask of relief and fury. Only when they were in the car, doors locked, pulling away from the mansion, did Arya finally let herself fall apart. She pressed her face into Bowen's shoulder and shook with exhaustion and relief and the bone-deep terror she'd been holding back the entire time. "You did it," Bowen murmured against her hair. "You beautiful, terrifying woman. You actually did it." "Don't sound so surprised," Arya managed. "I told you I was stubborn." "Stubborn doesn't cover it." He held her tighter. "You faced down a 400-year-old alpha and made her blink. Do you have any idea how incredible that is?" "I have some idea." Arya pulled back just enough to look at him. "But can we maybe not do that again? Ever?"
Deal.
Bowen's eyes were bright with something that looked like pride and fear and relief all tangled together. "Though knowing our luck, that promise will last about a week." "Probably," Arya admitted. "But for now, can we just go home? I want to sleep for a year and never think about high councils or psychic duels again." "Done." Bowen kissed her forehead. "Home it is." And as they drove through the San Francisco night, heading back to the airport and the life waiting for them in Los Angeles, Arya let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they'd finally earned a moment of peace.
Even if she knew it wouldn't last.
Chapter 8. 3 months had changed everything and nothing all at once. Los Angeles looked the same from the rooftop of Bowen's estate, sprawling and glittering and indifferent to the supernatural dramas playing out in its shadows. But Arya saw it differently now. Saw the territories hidden beneath the tourist attractions and traffic jams. Saw the invisible borders that divided pack from pack, the careful balance that kept the city from tearing itself apart. She'd become part of that balance. Part of the machinery that kept the peace, however fragile it might be. The diner had been shocked when she'd come back to work. Her manager had assumed she'd quit. 3 weeks of no-call no-shows would get anyone fired. But Arya had walked in with an apologetic smile and a story about a family emergency that wasn't entirely a lie, and somehow she still had a job. The tips were still terrible. The customers were still demanding. Her feet still ached after every shift. But it was normal. And after everything she'd been through, normal felt like a lifeline. Bowen hadn't understood at first. Couldn't comprehend why she'd want to keep slinging hash and refilling coffee when she could live in luxury at his estate, never worry about money again, spend her days training instead of working. But Arya had made him understand. "I need something that's mine," she told him. "Something that exists outside of pack politics and supernatural drama. Something that reminds me I'm still human, even if I'm not entirely human anymore." He'd accepted it. Even started driving her to work some nights, sitting in the parking lot reading on his phone until her shift ended. Never coming inside, that would be too much, too possessive, but close enough that she knew he was there. That she was safe. It was the kind of compromise they'd gotten good at over the past 3 months. Learning each other's boundaries. Figuring out how to be bonded mates without losing themselves in the process. Tonight, Arya had the night off. She stood on the rooftop garden that Bowen had apparently designed himself decades ago. All native California plants and comfortable seating, and a view that made the entire city feel like it belonged to them. The air was cool, carrying the scent of jasmine and car exhaust and the particular smell of Los Angeles in autumn. Bowen emerged from the stairwell with 2 glasses of wine. He changed out of his usual severe black into jeans and a soft gray sweater that made him look almost approachable. Almost human. His hair was slightly too long again, curling at his collar in a way that Arya found unfairly attractive. "You're staring," he said, handing her a glass. "I'm admiring," Arya corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" He settled into the chair beside hers, close enough that their knees touched. "Because the last time you looked at me like that, I ended up with claw marks on my back." Arya felt heat rise in her cheeks. "That was one time. And you liked it." "I didn't say I didn't." Bowen's mouth curved into something that was almost a smile. "Almost. I'm just pointing out that your admiring tends to have consequences. Good consequences, though. The best kind." They fell into comfortable silence, sipping wine and watching the city lights flicker to life as the sun set behind the hills. This had become their routine over the past few months. Stolen moments of quiet between pack meetings and training sessions, and the endless political maneuvering that came with being an alpha and his ancient mate. Arya had learned so much in 3 months. How to shift without losing control. How to read pack hierarchy in a glance. How to navigate the complicated web of alliances and grudges that defined supernatural Los Angeles. Octavia had been a patient teacher, drilling her on protocol until Arya could recite pack law in her sleep. But the most important thing she'd learned was how to be with Bowen. How to read his moods. How to push when he was closing himself off, and when to give him space. How to make him laugh, a sound that still surprised her every time she managed to coax it out of him. He'd changed too. Slowly.
Carefully.
Like a man learning to use limbs that had been numb for centuries. He smiled more now. Not often, but enough that Arya noticed. He touched her casually. A hand on her lower back when they walked together, fingers brushing hers when he handed her things, his knee pressed against hers like now. Small intimacies that said more than words ever could. And he'd started to talk about the past. About Elspeth, his first mate. About the guilt he'd carried for so long it had become part of his identity. About the years that had blurred together into meaningless survival until Arya had crashed into his life and forced him to feel again. "I never thought I'd feel this again," Bowen said suddenly, his voice quiet enough that Arya almost missed it. She turned to look at him. "Feel what?" "This." He gestured vaguely at the space between them.
Peace. Contentment.
Like maybe the universe isn't just trying to punish me for existing. Arya set her wine glass down. "You mean happiness?" "Yeah, you were really committed to that brooding vampire aesthetic. Very Edward Cullen of you." Bowen's expression shifted into something that might have been offense if his eyes weren't laughing. "Did you just compare me to a teenage vampire from a young adult novel? If the melodramatic angst fits." "I wasn't melodramatic. I was appropriately cautious given 2 centuries of trauma."
"Sure, Grandpa."
"Whatever helps you sleep at night." Arya grinned at him. "Though let's be real, you didn't sleep. You just paced and brooded, and probably wrote poetry about your feelings in some leather-bound journal." "I never wrote poetry. But you had the journal." Bowen's silence was answer enough. Arya laughed, delighted. "Oh my God, you actually had a journal. Did you write about me?" "Dear Diary, today a woman fell asleep on my shoulder and ruined my entire existence." It was more like encountered potential mate, debating whether to flee the country or embrace inevitable doom. But he was smiling now, really smiling, and it transformed his face into something younger, lighter. "You're terrible for my dignity." "Your dignity was already dead. I'm just dancing on its grave." Arya shifted closer, let her head rest against his shoulder. "But seriously, you really feel better? Like you're not just going through the motions anymore?" Bowen's arm came around her, pulled her against his side. "I feel like I'm actually living instead of just existing. Like the world has color again instead of just gray." "Is that too melodramatic?" "Little bit. But I'll allow it since you're being emotionally vulnerable." Arya tilted her head to look up at him. "I never thought I'd have this either, you know. I figured I'd work dead-end jobs until I was old, die alone in some crappy apartment, maybe get a cat to eat my corpse. Very dignified. That's horrifying. That's reality for a lot of people." Arya's voice softened. "But then you happened. And yeah, it was terrifying and non-consensual and probably violated about 15 different laws. But now..." She paused, trying to find words for the feeling that had been growing in her chest over the past 3 months. "Now I think maybe I understand why my mother gave up everything to protect me. Why she traveled through time, or however the hell she did what she did. Because this feeling, this sense of belonging somewhere, of mattering to someone, it's worth fighting for." Bowen's hand tightened on her shoulder. "You matter more than you know. To you maybe. Because you're stuck with me via magical wolf hickey. Not just to me." His voice was serious now, intense. "To the pack. To Octavia. Even to Flynn, who follows you around like a puppy whenever you're here. You've become part of something bigger than just us. And they chose you. Not because they had to. Because they wanted to. Aria's throat felt tight. Don't make me cry. I have a reputation to maintain. What reputation? The sarcastic disaster who makes terrible jokes.
Exactly.
Tears would ruin my brand. But she was smiling, even as her eyes burned. Thank you. For saying that. For all of this. For not giving up on me even when I was difficult. You're still difficult. I know. She pressed a kiss to his jaw. But I'm your disaster now. You said so yourself. Worst decision I ever made. But Bowen was smiling, and his hand was stroking her hair with a tenderness that made Aria's chest ache. And the best one. They stayed like that for a while longer, wrapped up in each other, watching the city breathe and shift beneath them. Aria let herself relax completely, let herself believe that maybe the worst was over, that maybe they'd finally earn some peace. That's when she heard footsteps on the stairs. Bowen heard them too. His body went tense, predatory instincts kicking in even as he recognized the scent. Octavia. What's wrong? Octavia emerged onto the rooftop, and her expression made Aria's stomach drop. She was holding a black envelope, expensive paper, sealed with dark red wax that looked almost like blood in the fading light. This just arrived, Octavia said, her voice carefully neutral. Courier service. Human. Said he was paid cash to deliver it to this address, to you specifically, and that it was urgent. Bowen stood, gently disentangling himself from Aria. He took the envelope, examined the seal. Aria watched his face shift through several expressions, confusion, recognition, and finally something that looked like dread. Who's it from? Aria asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Bowen didn't answer, just broke the seal and pulled out a single sheet of paper. His eyes scanned the text, and with each line he read, his expression grew darker. Bowen. Aria was on her feet now, moving to his side. What is it? Who sent this? He handed her the letter without speaking. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned, the kind of script that suggested fountain pens and a lifetime of practice. The words themselves were worse. Dearest Aria, you don't know me, but I know you. I've known you since before you were born. Watched you from a distance your entire life. Waited for the right moment to make contact. My name is Corvus Castellano. I'm your father. I know you have questions. I know your mother told you nothing about me. She had her reasons, though I believe they were misguided. But the time for secrets is past. The time for hiding is over. You've awakened your ancient bloodline. You've bonded to an alpha. You've come to the attention of the High Council. Every move you make now is being watched by forces you don't understand and can't fight alone. But you're not alone. You have a family. You have me. I'm calling in the blood debt your mother owed me. The debt that extends to you as her only heir. I'll explain everything when we meet, and we will meet, Aria. You have 3 days to come to the address below. Come alone. Come willingly. Or I'll be forced to come to you, and I promise you. Won't like the methods I'll use to ensure your cooperation. This isn't a threat. It's a promise from a father to his daughter. We have much to discuss. And time is running out faster than you know. Yours in blood and bone. Corvus. Beneath the signature was an address in Nevada. Middle of nowhere. The kind of place you went to disappear or to die. Aria read the letter twice, her hands shaking so hard the paper rattled. This is insane. He can't be my father. My mother never mentioned. She wouldn't have. Bowen's voice was hollow. If she was running from something, she would have kept him secret. Kept you safe by keeping you ignorant. But he says he's been watching me my whole life. If that's true, if he knew where I was, why didn't he? Aria couldn't finish the sentence. Too many questions, not enough answers. Octavia took the letter, read it quickly, and cursed in a language Aria didn't recognize. Corvus Castellano. I know that name. It's old. Older than Bowen. He was rumored to be one of the original ancients who went into hiding when the hunts began. But most people think he died centuries ago. Clearly he didn't. Bowen's hands were clenched into fists. And now he wants Arya to walk into some trap in the middle of nowhere, alone, based on a letter that could be from anyone. It's not a trap. Arya's voice was quiet, certain. It's my father. Both Bowen and Octavia turned to stare at her. How do you know? Bowen demanded. Because of this. Arya pointed to a line near the bottom of the letter. Yours in blood and bone. My mother used to say that every night before I went to sleep. I love you in blood and bone, Arya. Never forget that. I thought it was just something she made up. But if he's using the same phrase, then he knew her, Octavia finished. Knew her well enough to know her intimate phrases. Her private language. Arya's legs felt weak. She sank back into her chair, the letter clutched in her trembling hands. I have a father, an actual father, who's been alive this whole time. Who watched me grow up and never said anything. Never helped. Never. Her voice cracked. Why now? Why after all these years? Because you're powerful now, Bowen said grimly. Because you're bonded to an alpha. Because the council knows about you. You're not just some latent wolf he can ignore anymore. You're a player. A piece on the board. And he wants to claim you before someone else does. Or maybe he actually cares. Arya looked up at him. Maybe he stayed away to protect me, like my mother did. Maybe this blood debt is real, and he needs my help. Or maybe he's exactly the threat your mother was running from. Bowen's eyes were hard. Either way, you're not going. Not alone. Not to meet some ancient who's been hiding for centuries and suddenly decides to surface, now that you're useful. It's not your decision. The words came out sharper than Arya intended, but she didn't take them back. He's my father. My blood. If there's even a chance that he can tell me about my mother, about where I came from, about what I am, I have to go. Then I'm coming with you. He said alone. I don't care what he said. Bowen's voice was absolute. You're my mate. My responsibility. If you walk into danger, I walk with you. Non-negotiable. Arya wanted to argue. Wanted to insist on her independence, her right to make her own choices. But the fear in Bowen's eyes stopped her. The same fear she'd seen when she'd challenged Seraphine. The terror of losing someone he'd just started to let himself care about. Okay, she said quietly. Together. But we need to be smart about this. If it is a trap, we need backup. A plan. We can't just walk in blind. Agreed. Octavia was already pulling out her phone. I'll reach out to some contacts. See what I can learn about Corvus. Where he's been. What he wants. And I'll coordinate with the pack. Have a team ready to move if things go wrong. 3 days, Arya said, looking at the letter again. He gave us 3 days. Then we have 3 days to prepare. Bowen pulled her to her feet, wrapped her in his arms. Whatever this is, whatever he wants, we'll face it. Like we face everything. Together, Arya whispered against his chest. Together, he confirmed. But as they stood there holding each other while the Los Angeles night deepened around them, Arya couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. That her father's letter wasn't the end of her story. It was the start of a new chapter. One that would test everything she'd learned, everything she'd become. And somewhere in the Nevada desert, a man who'd been waiting for decades, maybe centuries, was finally ready to meet his daughter. Ready to call in a debt that Arya didn't understand and couldn't refuse. Ready to change everything. Again. If you want to know what happens when Arya meets her father, drop a comment below and tell us, is this a trap, or is Corvus really trying to protect his daughter? And seriously, if you made it this far without subscribing to Gracie Werewolf Story Bank, what are you waiting for? We drop stories like this every single week. Stories that'll keep you up at night, make you feel things, and leave you desperate for more. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Share this with someone who loves werewolf romance as much as you do. Because this story, this is just the beginning. Arya's journey isn't over. Not even close. And you're not going to want to miss what comes next. Until next time, stay wild, stay fierce, and remember, the best stories are the ones that refuse to let you go. We'll see you in the next one.